Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to today's School Safety Advisory Board meeting. It's great to see everyone in person. Thank you for taking the time to travel today and participate in the meeting. It is a little after 10 o'clock. My watch says 10:04. Therefore, I am calling this meeting to order. Please confirm the meeting is being recorded for public posting at the meeting's conclusion. Thank you so much. We will begin the roll call portion of this meeting of the advisory board members. Please respond verbally that you are present when I call your name. Eric Ebersol. Present. Karen Bailey. Dr. Kelly Anderson. Jaquetta Jacobs. Natalie Miller. Jennifer Wimbrow Jenkins. Sheriff Matthew Christopher. Chief Paul Kiefer. Patrick Graveline. Leah Weiss. Laura Moody. Present. David Engel. Zara Knockoff. Dr. Brittany Patterson. Present. Megan Berger. Present. Daniel Buck. Present. Gina James. Present. Joseph Cormier. Present. Deputy Anthony Quinata. Maria Navarro. And Carol Johnson.
Mr. Chair, Pamela Gaddy is also here.
Okay.
And I believe, Laura, you're here for Jennifer?
I am.
Correct. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Welcome, Ms. Johnson. Can you please confirm we have a quorum?
Yes, good morning. We do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. The last meeting of the advisory board was in February. The February meeting was recorded, and that meeting is available on the MCSS website. As such, there are no meeting minutes to be approved. You have a printed copy of today's agenda in front of you. Are there any additions? All right, no additions. So I am requesting the motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is written, sir.
All right.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The agenda for today is approved. All right, looking at the agenda for today, we will start today's meeting with MCSS Executive Director Kate Bryan sharing some MCSS updates. Ms. Bryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see everybody in person. It's always nice to see you all in person. Hopefully next time it'll be at our office once they finish the construction, but it's not quite ready yet. So, but fingers crossed. So just a few things for us. Excuse me, last month, April, was School Safety Month. So the governor made a proclamation, which was fantastic. We had a lovely recorded message from the First Lady, which is on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen it, take a look. So we're really excited. Montgomery County also passed a local resolution for Safe Schools Month. So it was just a really good month for us. April turned out to be a good month for MCSS. So we're still doing, as you know, the SRO and, school resource officer and security employee training. So this school year, the team has trained 48 SROs and 108 school security employees, and that's in the full training academy. There's 2 classes left this year, and we have about 10 in the May class and almost 70 in the June class. So we're gonna have quite a few more trained by the end of June. We also started, as you know, last year, our in-service training. So that's the annual training we provide to SROs and SSEs. And so far this year in the in-service, we've had 1,089 individuals trained. So as a reminder, there are 2 people that lead all of this effort. There's also a couple of our team that provide some of the training, but really the lion's share of the effort falls on 2 individuals, and Jim and Jeff just do a fantastic job of ensuring we have consistent training across the state. So really grateful for them. So a few other things, statewide tabletop exercises. We had one in November, we had one in February. Both of those were for our public schools, so all of our LEAs participated. In August of last year, and again, August of this year, we will have a tabletop exercise statewide for our non-public special education facilities and private schools. So we had it last year for the first time, went really well. We had quite a bit of participation. So we're really looking forward to the next tabletop exercise that's coming up. Handle with Care, as you know, Handle with Care is in about 19 of the 24 jurisdictions. We have our team, so an individual on our team, and we've partnered with the Department of Education to take over that program. So we're working toward getting the rest of those school systems on board, or jurisdictions, I should say, because it's really a coordination between law enforcement and the school system. So we had our second cohort of the School Safety Leadership Academy, and we had 25 participants this year. So this was the second year we've done it, sort of working out the kinks to make sure that it's something that we can continue to provide year after year, but really great reviews the first 2 years. Let's see. The biggest news I think we have for this year ties to legislative session. So those of you that may or may not know, your fantastic, wonderful, what else can I say? Amazing member of your board, Delegate Ebersol, took our Safe Schools Maryland or anonymous reporting legislation this year. He took it up, and I'm very happy to say it passed with no amendments. So I just want to say big thank you to Delegate Ebersol. It was a long time in coming, 8 years, but we finally got it through. So thank you for all your support in that. And just as an update for Safe Schools Maryland, so far this year, as of May 1st, we've already had 1,005 tips. So I haven't done them in the last couple of days over the weekend. It's higher than that now. But it just shows the impact that the system has on the state. So unless there are questions, those are the major updates from our office. Yes, Will.
Hey, do we have a date for the August tabletop training?
Ja, do we have a date yet?
No, we haven't.
We do not have a date yet, but we'll get it out.
Just so we can let our EMS providers
Yep.
in those areas know as far as
Absolutely. So we'll share the tabletop dates with the advisory board, as well as, if you're interested, we'll also share the training dates and locations for the SRO and SSC training. So if it's in your area and you want to stop by, you can coordinate with us and sit in and listen to some of the training that goes on. Yes?
Also, if you like a little pageantry, that bill hasn't been signed into law yet by the governor.
That's right.
We probably will sign it. We can allow to pass a law without signing. It's not likely. I will share. You'll keep an eye out for it too.
I will.
But if any of you want to come, there's no rules. Okay, you can just show up and stand behind the and sign the bill for us. So we'll try to keep you informed. If you want to
Yes.
come around.
Yeah, it would be great to have
It's a
you.
big of a hurry thing, but it's fun once you get there. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it, sir.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bryan, for updates. Thank you, Ebersol, for just being an advocate for this organization and all the great work you're doing in the state of Maryland. We appreciate you, sir. Any other questions? We had a couple questions. Any other questions before we kind of move forward for Ms. Bryan? All right, we'll move forward on the next item on the agenda. We have the privilege of hearing about school safety from a panel of Maryland students. We have one student that's here today. Gavin is here today. We appreciate him. We are going to adjust our panel somewhat to include some parent representatives as well from our board. So Ms. Buckheit will help to moderate the student voice panel. It has some prepared prompts for the students and the parents. Board members will be able to ask follow-up questions kind of after these initial prompts. So Ms. Buckheit, you can take it away.
Thank you. So if Ms. Jacobs could join us and Mr. Fuller, they get points for having responding to the audible this morning as they arrived. So yes, very happy that Gavin made the trip. I always email Gavin's principal after he joins various things. He provided testimony for 326 this year. Has actually had the opportunity to do a social media presentation to Prince George's County folks, student services, the MSDE folks, MDH. Yep. So a couple times this year, he's been able to present to a larger group around the impact really of social media on students. So we have a couple prompts that we'll start with, and I'll let Gavin kind of be the initial person response, and then we'll pass it to Mr. Collier and then to Ms. Jacobs. So both represent students, right, as parents on the board. So I thought it was maybe very appropriate for them to speak from the voice of their children at home. So before we get started with the first prompt, I'm going to ask you to each introduce yourselves, particularly Gavin, who you are, what grade you're in, and the school you're currently attending.
Let me get that out first. Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Gavin. I'm a junior at Long Range High School, and I will be serving as a student member on this board next year. Do you think we need these?
I think you can just leave it.
Oh, then never mind.
He's got it all set. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name is Joe Cormier. I'm the parent of a student with a developmental disability on this board. Currently, he's a junior in Calvert County Public Schools, and we also have a 7th grader in middle school this year.
I am Jaquetta Jacobs. My daughters are actually freshmen in college this year, so they graduated out during my term. We were at Meade High School in Anne Arundel County, where when they graduated, one was student council president and the other was senior class president, twins.
They controlled that school.
They did.
Good, thank you. So great representation though, both 3 different counties, right? Voices from some variety across our state as well as different age groups as well. So share with the board, Gavin, you're going to start, the most pressing concern you have related to safety in your school or schools within your county.
So I'm actually going to say I think there's like 2 parts of it. One is a little more broad, so I'm going to start with that. I think it's just awareness, but awareness in every kind of step of the scenario. I'd say awareness when it comes to mental health resources. And something that we don't really tackle, I'm going to say as much, is making sure we inform students what they can and can't say to counselors, because even if it's just that initial conversation, it has shown to open the door to more conversation, to actually getting the counselor to then learn about the issues the students don't initially feel comfortable with. I know we actually at my own high school had 2 tragic incidents where students took their lives, and it just speaks volumes that if they were able to make that initial connection, they may have been felt comfortable then opening up later on down the pathline of just talking. And that's also awareness, though, in every aspect. I know, for example, something that isn't as much covered, but I grew up with in my family, is making sure we teach some basic gun safety and let our parents lock it away. At least when I was in elementary school, that wasn't as common. My parents were very okay, you never touch this. We hide the keys, sort of thing. And they was aware it was in the house. So if I had ever friends, if they touched it, but that's not really conveyed nowadays. At least when I was in elementary school, most kids didn't even know their parents had one, and that could lead to safety issues if they were to get their hands on it. And then I'm going to say a little more specific, and I feel like this is going to be a pressing issue for always, is just mental health and how we address that, especially in that school safety, and how mental health can also lead to other actions to occur. And I definitely think kind of COVID exacerbated that for a lot of us students. And even just not being around people. Like I know I didn't have social anxiety before, but now I was like, okay, I'm getting used to it again. But like it was just something that coming back to schools, it shows that it can have such a variety of effects on students, and some to that, I'm gonna say most of that can lead to unsafe school environments.
Thank you, Gavin. All conversations Gavin and I have had in car rides or in sitting and waiting for testimony to happen. Mr. Kermit.
Hi, good morning. I think one of the pressing concerns we have in Calvert, which is a more rural county, is getting access to social workers and psychologists just to employ for the day, and having them not be stretched so thin that they're not, bouncing from school to school and not really having time to make those relationships. Coupled with social media and the use of cell phones, we have a no cell phone policy, but then it falls on to the staff members to enforce it. And they spend more time, curtailing that than they are the lesson of the day, when really we need more parent engagement to have the parents set those expectations, at home, because an unset expectation doesn't mean anything. And I think part of that parent engagement loss was when the Maryland PTA kind of shuffled, and now the Maryland Free State PTA. So I'd really like to see the state PTA and MSDE have a lot more partnership to get parents more back involved in the building. Again, in the pandemic, a lot of our parent volunteers were pushed out of the building, due to safety reasons, and they've matriculated from elementary to middle to high school. So that torch kind of got lost. So I'd like to see more parent engagement brought in for specifically to give these kids the mentorship and the expectations of phones down, we're going to pay attention today. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are coming up, is the social media aspect of kids, creating these, arguments, and it just escalating and getting echoed instead of it just being done.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs.
One of the pressing concerns that I would say would also be echoing Gavin's sentiments, mental health. Even though my daughters have graduated, I stick very close to Meade High School. And unfortunately, we did have a suicide that occurred last month with one of the scholars that was there. And although Meade did a 180 from the time that my daughters came in, like freshman year, like thanks to the new administration, they did school sweeps, like they locked things down, like you could see the SROs like forming relationships with them. We also had an incident, I believe last January, where there was a stabbing like on campus. So pressing concerns related to safety, I would still say just continue to education and awareness with the students. I have noted that if the students find that someone has a weapon on them or there is a gun and that person puts it on social media, those students turn them in. And you want to continue to like cultivate that environment where they have awareness and safety, and that everybody has a responsibility for their safety. And on the PTA side, constantly out there lobbying and applying for like grants when I was the PTA president, just to be able to provide those wraparound services to ensure that we have picnic tables so the kids can go outside and get vitamin D and take a break, and they have a aesthetically pleasing learning environment. All of that matters. And then, lastly, we were able to get a food pantry, hygiene pantry, school supplies, so that those students that are in need of it can consult with their counselors. And, I was there maybe 2 weeks ago doing a prom boutique, and it was good to see the kids come in with their counselors and get the supplies that they needed for the weekend. So I think just looking at the students holistically and addressing those issues will also help with school safety.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're going to jump off of what you kind of just shared in terms of some concerns. And if you could now talk to why you think those things are continuing to happen, right? They're not new. Everything that you've all spoken about isn't brand new, right? It's something that's kind of been pervasive. Gavin, you mentioned sort of from COVID, how that just exacerbated maybe some of those mental health concerns. But so what are some of the barriers? Why do you see some of these things happen?
I've already mentioned it, but also I'm going to say the lack of communication that definitely closes a lot of doors for students to want to go to counselors to begin with. And I can speak on that. I also think on how we handle it in our school systems entirely. We do a lot of times SEL lessons, but they feel forced and ungenuine. And because of that, students aren't really receptive and they push to the side. So the students who really need it don't feel like this is a comfortable space to mention that they have concerns because it feels so generic. And I'm going to say in a term that we've used in school. It feels very corporate. It feels like you're in this formal capacity in school where that's not always the best for a good learning environment, but also I'm gonna say a connective learning environment with your teachers. Beyond that, I think social media does play a factor, but it's also gonna be making sure we learn how to manage it. And like that's definitely, as mentioned already, a parent thing. Like they definitely need to step in that, but also I'm going to take a little twist. I think it needs to be awareness on how to use it, and that's something the school system can convey, but not just saying entirely no to it, because let's be, in modern day, social media is going to be used outside of school, inside of school. I think it's the same thing with phones. We have to learn a balance versus an entire riddance, because an entire riddance won't teach you that level of discipline that you need to kind of balance it. And I think those are just some things that have exacerbated at least the mental health side of things. I'm going to say the school safety, every school is different, but in Howard County, we had multiple schools whose back doors didn't lock. So anybody could get in. That's just my county alone. And I'm going to say I'm very blessed to be in my county I'm in, and they do a great job, but we need to make sure those simple things are done too. At least from students' perspectives, the cards that they did in Montgomery County were fairly effective, and we're good at that. But I think also figuring out how we can prioritize school safety, but also prioritize the learning experience. And I'm going to say making sure you enjoy your high school career, because I feel like a lot of times, for example, even just in field trips, we hyper focus on saying, okay, there's all these things can go wrong. Sometimes a simple field trip to a nearby French restaurant that you would walk to, that's all sidewalks, gets not approved just because of the logistical nightmare that is. And that's more of a school safety thing on the broader scale of like the entire state. But I'm going to say, or even counties and LEA's decisions, but those tiny things definitely, I'm going to say, make your high school career, and therefore I think help you in the mental health capacity as well. Because I'm going to say, at least when we started doing more events in our school, you felt more of a community. We felt like that we were all together, and that helped boost, I'm going to say, mental health support, because you felt like you had that person always. And that's just a few I can name off the top of my head, though.
No, that's great. Thank you, Gavin. Mr. Carmen.
So I don't want to pick on Delegate Eversole, specifically, but the blueprint for Maryland's education is an excellent start, but it focuses on teacher, and it doesn't say anything about our social workers, psychologists, speech, OT/PTs, all credentialed, certified, professional people, and they're kind of being left out, not to mention, in my own hat as an educational support staff member, not recognized at all. And, we want teachers to do everything to get kids from point A to point B in 180 days, but without your front office secretaries and your building services and your food services and your bus aides, instructional assistants, that doesn't happen. So we're putting more and more on the plate of a teacher and not giving anything for their support around them. So I feel like if we did the same investment in social workers and school psychologists as we're doing for teachers, it would help all of that wrap around. And again, with the PTA at the elementary level, we kind of left it to the PTA or the school group to raise funds to refurbish or rebuild playgrounds. And that leads to a lot of inequity, across counties. And in Calvert, they've started addressing that holistically, saying that playgrounds are the same as HVAC. We're going to make sure that we're putting stuff in the CIP to address the accessibility for kids with mobility issues or disabilities, to be able to have that full experience of a playground as all their other kids. So I hope that that mirrors out across the state.
Shake that too. Yeah. Ms. Jacobs.
Well, first I'm going to steal from my daughter's platforms, and I'm going to go with inclusion and kindness. And as student leaders, they both expanded the various groups that they had to make sure that they had neurodivergent learners, but every demographic, they made sure that there was representation so that they could share in their own voice. They were willing to make concessions, and then just creating that culture of kindness. We're going to allow everyone to speak their truth. We're going to accept it. It made a big difference with people being willing to step up. It helped them see, where they may have been limited, and incorporate that into their leading style. And I think when you have that culture and it just goes out across the school, same thing like you were saying, Gavin, that stress that you might feel coming to school because you don't fit in is lessened. But that's why I think you also have to have the students and the scholars be participants in school safety. The other part of it, I would say, is also like with the administration. I was pleasantly surprised that my daughters came back to speak, I believe last December, for an IB program. And they thought, we were just here and we're going to have access to the school and we're going to be able to move around. And the school was, no, we will escort you to this location. And when you come from this location, we're going to escort you back and then you're going to exit the school. And I know in one of our sessions last year, someone said, well, I have recent graduates that are able, our student representative said that there were recent graduates and they were able to move around. So it was good to see that Meade did not allow that. I think I'm going to stop there so that I don't ramble.
Yeah. And then, so really the last question prompt for them is, as they think about any of the concerns sort of expressed, what might be some solutions, right? So looking to how we maybe not solve, but begin to address, hopefully solve, right, in the future, some of these problems or concerns.
So I'll start, and I think I'm going to piggyback after on something you mentioned is the inequities between schools. I'm in if anybody here knows geographic of Howard County, I live in the more the Columbia area, which in contrast is, I'm going to say, lower socioeconomic towards our other counterpart on the western side. And just because of that, it's very, I'm going to say, blatant the amount of resources we have on the school properties. For example, if you look at your athletic center and not the center, but the field you play on, a lot of that's covered by boosters. And we had for example, my school had to fundraise 5 years just to get a new sign because ours was starting to fall down to keep the score up. The other school got it in 1 year just because of the parent infrastructure that I can afford it. I'm just going to be transparent. We used to be a tier, I think it was 3A is the highest, right, for lower socioeconomic? Was it 4? Okay, we were 3, so we were actually right before 4. And then we dropped, because I just remember the blueprint money and how it follows a 17K versus 11K, because my teachers definitely mentioned that national board certification. But beyond that, I think that creates disparities that can also exacerbate some mental health things. So I can't say the exact way to address it because that's also going to be a lot to the LEAs, but making sure that there is some way to ensure that equality between the different schools and different experiences. Because I'm going to be honest, me at my school is a completely different experience than, let's just say, someone at Glen Elk on the other side of my county. And Howard County is a very small county in comparison to others as well. So just imagine that I'm going to say Montgomery County, for example, from southern to northern, probably completely different experiences. Beyond that, I think solution is making sure that when lessons or policies go in place, that they have been reviewed and they're in the sense that they're not just explaining information, they're going through it in a good process for learning it, because that way we can actually implement it and try to get a more, I'm going to say, holistic approach versus just spewing out information when we need to convey either important information regarding mental health, school safety. Whenever we have those once a year lessons, make sure it's in a more holistic approach so it kind of covers our entire student experience versus just that one moment and we're like, okay, and then we forget about it probably as the next test comes along. And then beyond that, I think the last thing is going to be awareness, but not just flyers, making sure we work with teachers and staff to mention it in classrooms consistently, and promote it. I'm going to be honest, between the tip line or even just 988, I didn't know about many of those until I got into, I'm going to say freshman year when the tragic incident happened in my school. If not, it's just amazing to me that I didn't know about that until middle of freshman year, when that is such a useful tool for students across our state. So making sure that we kind of promote all the greatness we already have going versus just trying to make new programs. We have so much that's going well, but it's the awareness that bears people from using it.
Mr. Curry.
It's hard to follow excellent responses like that. Something that I see that is working in Calvert is our unified sports program, and that brings students with disabilities and students without coming together and doing bowling or bocce or cornhole. And it's not about winning the game or doing the thing. It's getting those kids to spend 45 minutes talking to each other and, hey, we're not so different after all. And building those relationships, I think, is really important, and it helps the inclusivity of the school environment. And our sheriff's department is just a huge supporter of that through the not just the torch run, but all year long. So I think the inclusive part of it is an important thing to think. And if you don't have someone in your family who has a developmental disability, it's hard to picture that. But when you're with them in the classroom and on the field, you can bring that to your everyday life. So I really support that.
And I would just also say like a campaign for awareness. I think if MCSS could engage the local PTA units or even the county PTAs and say, here's this information, make sure that you're pushing it down. There are all sorts of events that the PTA supports. So if they could even have the pamphlets on their table to go into the various schools or provide like the resources, for instance, where we just had, like the suicide or when they had the stabbing like last year, to be boots on the ground and say, what can we do to prevent this, to immediately try to go in and get those lessons learned from administration, maybe from parents, like while those lessons are fresh. And then the other, I also would also like to echo the equity component. That is a big, portion of what we did at Meade, trying to give them a new building where there was like sunlight that was on par, like where they're traveling to other schools. And I mean, what response do you have for your scholar as to why they're learning in an environment that's this way and their peers are learning in this environment? There is no acceptable answer. That was always my response. And that's why I did all of the grant applications and working with industry partners. However, I think it also, when you have a building and a culture that teachers and staff want to be there, like they also creates a culture of we want to protect the students, not just these are kids that have this environment and so this is the way that they should be treated. I think it also helps you retain top staff as well, so good recruitment tool.
Thank you. All right, questions from the board or student parents who have student type of voice? Go ahead, Laura.
Well, first of all, comment first and then question. Comment, and I appreciate you mentioning this support staff. Let us not forget the school nurses across the state. As a former school nurse in Baltimore County, I know the importance of the health suite being a safe harbor where students often come to discuss issues. So I'd like us not to forget the importance of our school nurses. I think it's nurses too, so it's a good term. Shout out to them. Question for the student. We hear about the importance of increasing parent engagement. Parents have lots of ways that they think they might like to do that. How do you feel that students could help to increase parent engagement in a safe school environment?
I would say make it a collaborative environment when we have these and when you want it, to the point the student is excited by that or they recognize its importance. A lot of times we mention, hey, give this paper to your pamphlet. In most honesty, it's going to get lost in the backpack before it makes it home. I'm going to be honest. And that's definitely a thing that we have to address, making sure that like if students want to tie their parents in, it has to be something they're interested in, they're engaged in, and that's going to help. But also, and this is more of this is just a general barrier, it's always going to be more of those parents who are naturally inclined to be involved. So we have to make it more accessible. So making sure we have translated versions. I live in, my school alone is primarily Latino and African American. And I'm going to say it's completely different. It's not fair like that our students aren't having the same resources just because they don't speak natively the language or their parents, because it's gone to the point, and I'm only in Spanish 5 AP. I can understand it. I can't speak it. My dad didn't teach me. I'm Puerto Rican, but I was like, so I'm a No Sabo kid. But long story short, I'm literally my butchered Spanish translating information like that in forms on my own. And I'll be honest, I can't do that for every student. I know there's not enough students. So making sure it's aware that there's Spanish translations, not even just accessible, but the awareness of it kind of ties back to my whole awareness point, because a lot of times a school may have it, but it's on this off website or somewhere in a corner where you don't see it right away. Or it's inside a whole bunch of English text, and then they have the little Spanish link right in the middle where they can't read the rest of it to even get there. So I think that's a big way we can engage it in that regards. Beyond that, I think more parent events at the school, like kind of communicative and building that. And that's going to be more of, I'm going to say, a school level thing. That's a lot of the PTA. So tying in the PTA, and that can also help to make sure parents are not, even if they can't show up to school every day, because I'm going to say my mom works, and I think many of my friends, at least where I live, work very busy jobs, 9 to sometimes 12 p.m. at hers right now. She's in finance, so crazy right now. But besides the point, making sure that there's other ways to engage versus just showing up to a meeting though. So like it can be virtual, it can be just a conversation the student's interested, but try in a multifaceted way to go to every single point, like try every opportunity versus just saying, okay, the pamphlet, we're doing something, because that's not enough to reach all the parents, because every parent has a different story. Some can't make it because they're so busy. Some are able to make it because they're different out. They have a different schedule, and just making sure that it's accessible to all parents to get the information for their ways, but also that students want to tell their parents the information. You have to, sorry, y'all.
If I can follow up on the nurses, from what I have experienced, a lot of parents think that nurses are just the boo-boos, Band-Aids, and bags of ice. And nurses today are doing medications 2 or 3 times a day, insulins, feedings, GI tubes, safe meals, so many other things that go into a nurse's day, on top of all of the regular boo-boos, Band-Aids, and things. And to talk about the translation services, in the special education world, MSDE does give us a lot of translated documents, but when you get into those meetings, having a translator over the phone or over Teams, trying to interpret all of the things that you're trying to talk about in a language that regular parents don't even talk in the first place. So talking about all these different assessments and evaluations, it is still a struggle. So I'd love to see MSDE, MDH put more effort into getting translated documents and services and training for staff when they have those kinds of meetings.
Any other questions?
I have one. So you talk about awareness a lot, and I think I'm going to ask the panel here to do this as well. So a lot of issues in our society, and a lot of information that is out there that we can get on water with, or at least is available. But typically, no one pays attention to those things until it's actually happening in your life. So for kids, we're talking elementary school all the way up to high school, and then the parents, you mentioned a little bit there. What is the best method you can think of to get that message more, getting across to all the students that's more of the frontal lobe of their brain instead of the back in the background when it's already happening and they're thinking, I still don't know what to do. You talk about drug awareness and things like that. If you have something you should call mental health issues, unless there's something going on in mental health, you're going to call friends and family trying to figure out what to do, even though the message and the words are out there. So I'm asking the question about how that awareness can be better projected to the student level.
I'm just gonna say thank you for the question, because I had to think, for just to say, I was thinking about that, and there isn't one way. I'm gonna keep reiterating that, but I think a good way, of some ways, are like when you mention it, you don't just go over a few slides. You have a conversation about it, you make it more of a group discussion, and building that environment long term will then put it more on students' frontal lobe, so then it's conveyed to parents. And I think we already mentioned a lot of times the translation, making it more accessible, is a good way, but I'm going to say also recognizing that these events are already happening. I can speak from my county as the 25-26 Howard County Student Council President, and there's so many incidents that happen every single year. I feel like every school has some sort of an incident that happens when it comes to school safety. I'm going to say at my school, we've had a few just this year. I remember even when I was in 8th grade, we did have a stabbing similar to Meade. And it's just making sure that we not take advantage of the moment, but since these are already happening, make sure okay, it happens. We don't just go on a holistic approach, not just trying to fix the issue, but also now that everybody, and this is on people's minds, using that, it's a sad way to say this, but as a way to get out information because it's on people's minds. But also, I feel like nowadays it's getting more and more always on people's minds as we see more, I'm going to say, school shootings, we see more of these incidents, and I'm going to say, and this is the one good thing I'll say to social media, they've kind of highlighted that more and shown the real danger, which has it has made it more on people's mind. But that's just going to be a segue to kind of get the whole entire, I'm going to say, wrap around to make it important. And they receive it, but put it in the frontal lobe, as you mentioned, not just back lobe.
And can I just add on to that? I know at Meade, also part of our funding that we requested last year was for an initiative called Purple Pulse. And really what this is centralized locations throughout the school where students will be able to get information, so electronic boards. And I think if you continually just have that information over and over, day after day, month after month, year after year, you begin to embed it into the student's mind. For me, I work in the intelligence community, and so things that they want us to know security-wise. Everywhere I turn, there's a poster. Did you know you're supposed to do this? Did you know? Did you know? So every day I'm walking by, you're supposed to do, you're supposed to do, you're supposed to do. And over time, it becomes ingrained. And I think you'll just have to continually make that information readily available so that students are like, I've seen this flash, and I've seen this flash on the screen, the monitor, 100 times, and I've seen this poster, like every day, and then this one, and then this one. Like, so if this issue occurs, what was it that my brain saw? This is what I need to do.
Thank you. All right, so your board members obviously are going to return to their position as board member, and we'll be with you for the discussion. But Gavin, I believe, can stay for the duration of the meeting, right? So can remain available for other questions as we get into that, please. I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel members, especially for the curveball we threw you this morning. Your insight is very valuable to this board, and also to the state of Maryland as we continue to try to improve things together as one. So we appreciate that. Next on the agenda, I do have a break, a 10-minute break. About school safety from a panel of Maryland school leaders. I will moderate and likely join in on this conversation, but we have some prepared prompts for our leaders and have given these prompts to them in advance. Board members, again, just as the previous panel, you will be allowed to ask questions after these prepared prompts. So, at this time, I would like to give my panel members, distinguished colleagues, opportunity to introduce themselves, not only their name, but also the school and school district in which they serve. So I'll start with Linda.
Linda Chandler, principal at Old Mill Middle School South in Anne Arundel County.
Ricardo Hernandez, principal at Seneca Valley High School, Montgomery County Public Schools.
Dan Buck, head of school at Lucy School at Perry County, not public school.
All right. So I want to thank you all again for joining us this morning, taking the drive. I'm feeling bad that you was making this super huge commute, but for some of you, it wasn't as bad a commute as I thought it was. So I appreciate it nonetheless.
Drive back to school.
So we'll start off with our first prompt, which is share with the board your most pressing concern you have related to safety in your county, not just necessarily at your particular school. And I will start with Linda, if you don't mind.
I think one of the most pressing things is what's very concerning to administrations across our all of our different LEAs is the inconsistency of our administrators to student ratios. Some school districts have them as large as like 800, 900 to 1. And we all know that at that point it becomes very unsafe and we're outnumbered. Some LEAs have it as large as like 1 to 400, especially with secondary students, and again, very outnumbered. We have to, at that point, become very reactionary and not proactive. It's harder to build relationships, it's harder to have a sense of belonging, those aspects. The other issue that I have is the lack of SROs, inconsistencies with that across all of our LEAs, especially through our secondary system. Oftentimes, at least in our district, in Anne Arundel, our LEAs for high schools have them in Anne Arundel. But not all of our middle schools have it. So I'm a tier 4 school that does not have an SRO and has not had an SRO. I have a beautiful brand new building. I have a brand new SRO office, but an SRO has never stepped foot into that office. I often have to call the road police at least twice a week. So that's very concerning to me. But also the technology is evolving in this world too. And I think another concern that I have is I can literally go on makerworld.com or cults.com where 3D printer items can be printed. And if you just type in the word gun, you'll get 15,000, 18,000, 6,000, 7,000 printed guns that are printed on 3D printers daily. Okay, so these are concerning because at the end of the day, they look like real guns. And it's hard to kind of stay up with the science of the things that are happening. 3D printers are amazing. I have 16 of them in my schoolhouse. So like I'm not frowning on 3D printers, but there has to be something where we have to not allow adolescents to purchase or to buy or to download these items. There should be some restrictions to that, and as of right now, there are not. And so we're going to constantly be fighting an uphill battle, similar to how we're fighting it for social media right now, with the technology that's evolving. So these are some concerns that I have within our own LEA.
I'm gonna piggyback. So if you don't know, Seneca Valley High School is the largest high school in the state of Maryland at 460,000 square feet. We are 5 floors and are completely surrounded by 4 major highways in Montgomery County. I have 2,500 students and 300 staff members. So that's 2,800 souls. I pray for every day that they come in safe, and I pray every day that they go home safe. And that is a heavy burden to bear. To Linda's point, when you look at the staffing that, a school of that size, I think we're more fortunate in Montgomery County. I have 6 assistant principals. I have 9 security staff members. But at 460,000 square feet, we can't cover every bit of that space. And we are not allocated, although we've been approved, budget-wise, we have not been given a 10th, 11th, or 12th security assistant. I am fortunate that I do have an SRO, or we call them community engagement officers. That does have to work in my cluster, but is primarily at my school, just because the Germantown area is always hopping. Quite a bit with either gang activity or just neighborhood beef that's occurring. And so that is a challenge when you have 6 administrators and you have 9 security. If we're all there, today I'm not, we have 1 lunch, so 2,800 folks are eating lunch all at the same time. I have 77 exterior doors, 41 student bathrooms, 17 staff bathrooms that I have to account for during that entire span of time with 18 people. Can't do it. It's just not possible. And so it goes back to, what is my role as an instructional leader? I can't say that I do that well. I try, but there are those things that we have to, the technical work of keeping a building moving and having the security, the safety, the bathrooms working. More than not, I'll have 4 or 5 bathrooms closed during the span of a day because kids stick bits down the toilets and they clog them. And now that creates another issue that, parents and students don't like to hear. And so it's the challenges of that infrastructure, something that size, and how do you keep that moving? How do you keep that running? How do you keep everyone safe and secure? This past year, one of the initiatives that our superintendent, Dr. Taylor, put forth is that we had town hall meetings, and that was one of the areas where we addressed safety and security. See something, say something. We've been fortunate. Last year, I did have 2 ghost guns that were brought into school that I had to put ourselves in a lockdown. One of those was actually a student went online, used his parents' credit card, bought it, had it shipped to his house. The only thing that was missing was the firing pin. All he had to do was put a bullet inside, pull it back, and let it go, unlike a pistol that, and it would have gone off. Then the next day I had a copycat because he felt, oh, this kid did it, I'm gonna do it too. We have 283 security cameras that we have to monitor, right? But again, where's the manpower for that? We are piloting Volt AI at my school. We have 30 cameras that have the technology, but that technology is only good if something is seen, if something's taken out. It can't go through bags or clothing, to the extent where last week our chief of security, if the joke is, if you can figure out at Seneca Valley, you can figure out in Montgomery County, because we're just so big that if any systems can work there, they can, we can scale it somewhere else. And so they did test runs after school with no one in the building to see how Volt AI would work. If it saw a gun, would it alert us? And it would. If someone fell and was in distress, would it alert us? And it did. Loitering, if someone's in a spot for too long, will it alert us? It did. Same thing with a bag. If a bag is left unattended for too long, would it alert us? And it did. But 30 cameras off of 283, it's not going to catch everything. It's not going to get it all. And again, it has to be actually out and visible for it to detect. So I think the challenge is that some folks in Frederick, they don't have security assistants in buildings. They just have assistant principals and a security officer. So as an assistant principal, you are the security. And other LEAs are in that similar situation. Montgomery County, again, we are fortunate. I am fortunate of the resources that I do have. I have a full-time PPW, a full-time social worker, full-time psychologist, that they do have to go out to other schools. I actually have an integrated wellness center that's run by Identity that has full medical services for our community and any students that are enrolled. I have all those things, but at the same time, my psychologist, my social worker, my wellness center, they all have a full caseload and 30 to 40 deep waiting. There's just not enough of those folks, and you can't find them. No matter how much money you throw at the situation, no matter how much you do, how much recruiting, there aren't enough trained individuals to be able to service the demands that we currently have in schools. And I only have 2,500 students. There are 2 high schools in Montgomery County that have over 3,000 students. So imagine then those situations. And so I think when you look across the state, the demands have increased so much, and we're trying to resource all the demands, but there's just not enough human capital to sustain the demand that's happening. So that was a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think what you just mentioned is very similar in the non-public school arena as well. So bearing in mind that Maryland has 100, 200 nonprofit schools. I'm a representative of AIMS. We're a member of AIMS. It's a network of all of our schools. We're very tuition driven, right? So we're nonprofit, but if for whatever reason the economy goes, something happens, that affects what we have, right? We don't get much from the state. And that can be pretty scary. So I'm in charge of a very small school in comparison. So we have 169 students. Probably one of the biggest ones actually was enrollment in Frederick County, pre-K through 8th grade. And we have locks, electronic locks, we have cameras, but they definitely need to upgrade. There are things that we can't do, we can't provide for without funding. The last I checked in Maryland, I think the only kind of funding that we could possibly get is related to hate crimes, and where we particularly are, that's not an issue on my campus. So just like you said, we also see funding and resources. That's one of the biggest concerns.
All right. So given how you all answered the first prompt and also what you heard from the previous panel, what are your ideas on why these problems exist currently, just in your opinion? Can you give that perspective?
I think a lot of it goes back to what our student panelist said was mental health. There's a lot of mental health going around, and we don't have the staffing to mitigate that. We have amazing folks that want to be certified social workers, psychologists, and school counselors, but it's the only certifications in the state of Maryland where they actually have to take a sabbatical or a leave of absence to actually obtain that certification. So oftentimes they start the program and decide not to finish the program to become a clinician due to the fact that they can't have that financial burden. Where myself as a school administrator, I do not have to take a leave of absence or to be a school principal or even to be a superintendent, right? And so that puts a lot of burden financially on our folks that want to be clinicians and that have the heart and love and desire to help and support our students. But oftentimes we're not finding folks that want to take that time off because they can't afford to just do so. They can't live, right? Or oftentimes they're having to take loans to even do so. Like I have a teacher that's doing it next year, and she's like, I'm gonna try to sub in the afternoons after my clinicals to come back to go do this because I can't afford not to sub and do the things. And she's a single mom, right? And so I praise her every day that she's going to do that because she's going to be fantastic. But oftentimes I have to have conversations with folks that they tell me that they can't finish their programs to be a clinician. So I think mental health and the ratios of that, if we want to help mitigate that, we have to try to change our process of how certification works in the state of Maryland for our clinicians, or programs maybe after hours so that they can get clinical hours at some of our pathways, separate paths, or other local organizations that we could partner with, so that they don't have to take that financial burden for themselves individually, and so that we actually can continue to grow our own within our LEAs and to kind of have people continue to work back in our school districts. Because oftentimes we do have the vacancies, and we have people that are willing and wanting, they just are not able to finish it and do so. So I think that's one aspect that we could look at. We can't necessarily fix or mitigate the social media aspect of that, but we can train and educate. And so some LEAs, I think, do this already really, really well, but I think we need to have a uniform front from our state about how we can do that, and continuing to partner with our police chiefs and our local police departments. I think that's powerful, because at the end of the day, even if it's virtual or it's a hybrid model or it's a community event, oftentimes we can have tables and resources available. And so I think part of it is just kind of having consistent messaging, because all of our LEAs have messaging, they're just not necessarily consistent messaging. Yeah, and so it's one of those things where we have to, I would ask that we kind of have that, so that that burden doesn't necessarily fall on the principal to come up with the messaging, right? I'm not a clinician. I tell people that every day, right? I'm an instructional leader, but I'm dealing with school safety every day, even this morning before I got here, right? And so these are things that are happening, and we're not necessarily trained to kind of mitigate some of those things, and the people that are trained are bogged down with caseloads that are unreasonable. So I think the one thing that we can do is look at our staffings across all of our LEAs, what's the ratios across all of our LEAs, and have consistent policy regarding that. If we want to change something, that's an active way we can change it, is through policy and regulation. Because right now what we're doing is unreasonable for one person. Like, one person can't do 800 kids. That's about the ratio, it seems like, if your school 600 to 800 kids.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? Like, it's unmanageable. They outnumber us. The kids are always going to outnumber us. And I'm not trying to give them any ideas, right? But the reality of it is that they do, and they're smart, intelligent, amazing kids. But oftentimes we're bogged down with like the little things of social media, the bullying report, those things that are so important. But if we had clinicians or other people that could help us mitigate some of that, we could actually go to the sense of belonging and building relationships and be preventative and not so reactionary.
So I think there's a lot swimming when you were talking. I think there's the desensitization. Thank you.
Yeah.
Today is like unparalleled. I mean, it's like you hear a gunshot, you keep moving. At least in Germantown, that happens. You see something you see something on social media, and the kids just keep moving. Like, they don't skip a beat. We had a shooting last week in a parking lot at Blake High School. 2 months ago, we had a shooting at Wooten High School. At my time at Paint Branch for 8 years, there's a myriad of things that occurred in the Northeast Consortium of Montgomery County. And I think that goes back to what the young man said earlier, about mental health and SEL lessons, and how are we implementing SEL lessons. They're all great and good. Please understand that. But we're in testing season, and the state says we need to test by this, and we need to do this by this, and that it becomes unreasonable to try to fit all these things in a responsible way in a calendar that is, one that's. I went to Rundle High School, so I know the Maryland system well, right? But we didn't have all those issues back then. Society would look very different. So we didn't have the SEL lessons. We didn't have all of these new mandates that are now being put upon LEAs, right? And there's another layer to that. As Linda said, we're instructional leaders, but we have to secure all the souls that come in each and every day. If you're like at a high school like mine, or Meade, because we lost to Meade in the playoffs this year. Again, being a Rundle grad, I remember the old Meade. My mom was stationed at Fort Meade for many years. We are not just now safety and security people during the day, but we're safety and security at night. on the weekends, on a Friday night football game in Germantown at 7 o'clock at night, when you've got 2,000 people in the stands and you've got 5 security and 6 principals or 6 administrators, I can't handle 3,000 people during the, they outman us during the day and they outman us at night. And yet, if something happens, it's on my shoulders. And there's nothing there to support the care that's needed for administrators, because every day it's becoming increasingly more and more taxing. And Friday was National Principals Day. By the way, I didn't text you, sorry. I'm humbled to serve the Germantown community. I'm humbled and privileged to serve Seneca Valley, but it is a toll. And no one kind of talks about that, because administratively, that's, my wife comes every day, I get home, she's like, you okay? I'm like, it was a day. And then the amount of the compartments that I have right now is outstanding, right? And I think that's an aspect that's overlooked. And increasingly, schools are being asked to do all the things, to be the parent, to be the food provider, to be the mental health specialist, to be the medical person. I have 110 students who are in the alternative learning outcomes. 45 are in LFI, Learning for Independence, and I have 55 that are in SEB, school community based, that have toileting needs, that have pronounced needs. I've got a community within a community. I've got CTE, construction, electricity. I've got kids who are exposed to weapons every single day as part of the curriculum. And it's everything we can to stay on top of the incidents reports, the referrals, the things that come through to triage to ensure that kids are getting spoken to or seen. But there are so many things that are happening. To Linda's point, we're being overrun. And there isn't anything that I can see in the foreseeable future that's going to change that. And it's a scary thought. And I have a 22-year-old who's now in Chicago and an 18-year-old who's coming home from school. What their experience was just 4 or 5 years ago is vastly different than what's happening in school today. And social media absolutely has degraded what we have done as a society. And I've said that since I became an administrator. And I've worked at BCC, I've worked at Paint Branch, I worked at High Point in PG County, I worked at Greenbelt Middle. I've had the experience, right? Every community has their challenges, but these challenges have just become so increasingly more that we just can't keep up. And you just feel like a duck. I'm great up here, but my feet right here are just moving and you'll never see it. And that's what I feel like every day.
I don't have much to add to that. My day-to-day reality is not as complex as shared. But I will say that I think there's a lack of resources and funding in general on our side. The non-public side, we're, as it should be, we're not thought of as first, right? First comes public systems. But I think sometimes we could be thought of a bit more. We have the same reasons with the same problems at the small level. I do want to share one thing that you mentioned, Gabriel, this one.
Yeah.
Gavin, sorry. I have the same issue myself as head of school about SEL being too corporate. I think that's an issue that we all have, is that we want to bring solutions that usually involves money and people and a sort of formal way of doing this thing with the people on the ground, the SEL, the counselors, the teachers, and just it's all about hiring good folks. We're all overstretched. It's sort of hard to get that quality, organic, lesson to get people to empathize and care about achieve for their own achievement. That's all. Thanks.
All right. As we close out this conversation, one more additional prompt. What additional supports do you think will be helpful to school leaders as we continue to strive and achieve in regards to school safety?
Well, I have a list, but I won't go through it all. But similar to what you were stating earlier, Mr. Foreman, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. You said, all these people are not listed within the blueprint. Well, principals are not either. School leaders are not either, right? And so here we have principals that are not mentioned in the school principal in that aspect. So like, are we valued, right? And so that is something I strongly believe in, that we have to feel valued, because the pipeline is not there in school leadership right now. We don't have people knocking at the door to want to be school leaders because they can make more money being a nationally board certified teacher sitting in that classroom and leave every day at 2:30 and not get those phone calls on Sunday, on a Saturday, while I'm at an event with my own children, and have to leave my children at an event to go attend to a school issue, right? So like the burden that it falls on us, it does fall on us, but then we're not valued or compensated in those ways similarly to teachers, as well as everybody should be represented. I want to be clear about that. We also need to strengthen policy and laws and regulations about students not necessarily being expelled anymore, right? The number of expulsions that actually occur in schools are like non-existent. I've had a child stab another child with a pair of scissors in the face, where the child had to get stitches in their face, and the expulsion got denied by the state. It went all the way up to the appeals, and the state overturned it back to us, right? So we can't, we're pretty much telling kids that like, even if you do this, you're gonna get away with it and it's gonna be okay and you get to come back to our schools. At what point do we say like, no, it's not safe for you to come to our schools, so that we set that precedent so that kids don't do those things and bring those things to schools, right? Because oftentimes kids are gonna try to get away with what they can get away with, right? We did it when we were kids, but we just did it on a bike without social media, right? And we had to be home before the lights. But we live in a different world now, right? Where they can print off 3D printed guns, where they can go burglarize a 7-Eleven to get food and snacks and do those things. And yet they're still coming to our schools after they just did that. So at what point are we protecting our schoolhouses and saying, no, like this is not okay. You cannot attend our schools if you are committing crimes. Adult crimes should result in adult like consequences, right? But they're in schools, they're doing it in schools because the consequences are not there, right? So a kid can bring a weapon to school and sometimes only get a 10-day suspension because it was only seen by a couple people and there was no harm and we don't know what the intent was, right? And so like, how is that safe? How does that make me feel safe as a school leader? Why does that make me want to be a school leader, right? And lead the charge of instruction when like 90% of our day is about school safety, because that has to be the priority. When I would love to have it be the inverse, where 90% of it was about school instruction and have a sense of belonging, and the 10% be about school safety. But it's harder to manage that right now without having a lower ratio for us to manage, for us to monitor, for us to see, because similar to what Ricardo said, we're the parents, we're the bringing the food, we're bringing you a safe place, we're giving you community events, we're a community school, we're doing the pantry, we have mental health providers, we're giving you your kids' school physical so they can play sports. We're the ones going over your kids' grades with you, even though we give you every portal online to do so, right? So we're doing all of these things, and I don't mind any of that lift, and I would be very clear about that. I love my job, and I show up every single day loving my job, and I'll do it until I retire. But the reality of it is, I can't say I'm not exhausted. The school leaders across our state are exhausted because we don't feel valued, we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard. We've been trying to get a panel on the State Board of Education for Maryland for years, and it keeps getting denied, right? Our politicians aren't even hearing us, right? And then us having the blueprint and us not even be a part of it or even consulted on it, again, we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard, we don't feel valued. We work with all of our teachers, we work with all of our students, we work with all of our paras, we work with our nurses, our psychologists, the list goes on and on and on, our bus drivers, et cetera. And we work with our students and we work with our communities and we work with our parents. But at the end of the day, who works with us, right? We have a few people that tell us what to do, but like who's checking on us, right? And so that needs to be mitigated, that needs to be done. And another thing is we're talking about mental health for students, and that's a huge aspect of it. But if you count the number of days students are testing in Maryland through all of our LEAs, you want these scholars to take AP classes and all of the things, but they're having to take MCAT, Middle school alone, 8th graders have to take 16 days of just MCAP, and that's not if you're an ELD student, that you also have to do WIDA, then you also have to do the student survey. So we're testing our students a good 30 days out of a school year, not including quarterly assessments or SCLTs or other CFAs that we provide our students. That's an eighth of our school year, folks, that we're just testing. So mental health, we want to work on mental health, we can't keep testing our kids to death. We need to actually elevate them and get to know them and maybe figure out a new system to get the same data, but maybe not, we need to test our kids. We test them in 3rd and 5th grade, and then we test them 6, 7, 8. Middle school's hard, y'all. Middle school's hard, right? And middle school's my jam, let's be clear. But it's a lot of testing for children whose brains are still developing, and they're more worried about like who's their friend than what they're learning. It's a lot of pressure for kids in mental health. So I'm advocating for us not to have as much testing as we have, but it's also exhausting being the teacher giving all those tests or the facilitator of those tests. So, I mean, I could probably sit here all day and give you my laundry list of things how I would fix the world, right, in education. But if I can touch on anything, it's strengthening the laws and policies so that our kids have consequences for their actions. It's the testing protocols that it's affecting our mental health of our students. And it's changing some of the ways that we're looking at certification for our clinicians so that we can get more clinicians and not have that mitigating factor of them not wanting to become clinicians because of that financial burden. And then check on your administrators, y'all. I've had principals across the state that didn't even get a congratulations or thank you on National Principals Day. That's a shame. I was not one of them. My staff's full to be rotten.
Me too.
But the reality of it is that if you surveyed the state of Maryland, all the principals, probably half of them didn't even get a thank you or hello that day. Sorry.
No, you hit a lot of you hit a lot of things. I think the one thing I've noticed is just the partnerships with our law enforcement is something that we need to further cultivate. I think we went through a stretch there where it was us against them, and it really has to be we. And I'm fortunate that I have an outstanding CEO, and we have a lot of open communication all the time. Some of my other partners in MCPS, their relationships aren't as great with their CEOs, and it's just you stay in your car, and I'll call you when I need you. I have an office for him. I gave him access to cameras because he needs to be a partner, truly, in what we do. But next year, Montgomery County Police Department said they don't have the budget to support CEOs. And then what? And then what do I do when a kid comes in with a gun or a knife or a machete? Because that was 3 weeks ago. What then? Because then I'm in the front line, right? And that's when my wife goes, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And so that has to be a bigger push from the state. The state needs to step in and start, creating policy, doing something to advocate more for that police school partnership, LEA partnership. Because that, whether you're in Frederick and the CEO is the only person because you don't have security assistants, or you're in Montgomery County where you have a CEO who has to go through 2 clusters, and we have 27 high schools. We have 30-something middle schools. We have 200-something elementary schools. We have 155,000 students with 25 CEOs. That again, proportionally is not where it needs to be. And so I think that is something that needs a lot more advocacy. I think, again, to your point, I've got a teacher who was trying to get her counseling certification as an ELD counselor. She can't take off work. And that's a big thing, right? So if we're saying, it's all the things. Thank you. I'm done.
We need help.
We need help.
Yeah.
Anything there?
Well, I'll just say that you maybe think about law enforcement and how it's a little random in the non-public world what support we get. So for example, in Frederick County, I think we have a good relationship with our local law enforcement. It's just kind of been built naturally. And so when we had an incident this year, I had a basically I could text the officer and I got the support that I needed. But then in Montgomery County, next to us, I went to a school recently where they had an officer come every single day. They're just there. I said, wow, that's great. I wish we could do that too. So just the resources and the funding for private schools, for non-public schools, it's just, I wish it was a little bit more bountiful and fair for all counties and schools.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Because a lot of our private schools will take the students who we can't meet their needs in a public setting. And some of those students are the most challenging students. And because those schools have the resources or those schools have the ability to reach those students, that's why they're there. But they also need support.
Sure.
They need support on every aspect of it, from security to social services, because if we're not able to meet the needs in the least restrictive environment for some of these students, and they are placed at a private setting, I don't know what that setting looks like. I don't know obviously that setting is the right one for them, but what resources does that private setting have, whether it's private school or, and that's something that has to be brought up, because to your point, you also need those resources. I mean, it's shared across the system and across the state.
All right. Well, I want to, first of all, thank you all three. Very powerful, the answers to these prompts. I know for myself, usually I would chime in on stuff like that, but I can't really find an angle because you guys are so good at your responses. So I appreciate that. I want to leave the floor open for any board members to ask any follow-up questions. Yes.
So, of course, the joke always is we should treat lunchroom monitors like jury duty and have people come in, every day and force them to do it. Trying to find the resources for SRO specifically, it comes down to that county budget. Is it going to come out of the sheriff's budget? Is it going to come out of the school's budget? Who's paying for it? Ultimately, it's all the same tax dollar. Right? To address the pipeline problem, what can we do to expand the CTAs to not just have plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, but to have the teaching of the social workers and psychologists, those kinds of things? Where do you see that kind of expand?
I can only speak for my LEA and Anne Arundel that we do have that now in our 2 CTE centers. We do have a teaching pipeline that we have started and the Grow Your Own, where we're actually going out to all the high schools and kind of talking to them, actually going to the CAT North program to kind of speak to them about leadership and about to be a student leader, because we see potential in students. So I tell kids every day, like, you're my future teacher, you're the future principal, right? And it's kind of why we do the fun, principal for the day, even in our elementary schools, because we want kids to see value in our work. It's not that I don't think kids see the value in our work. I don't know if society sees value in our work, right? They loved us during the pandemic because they were all in your living room, and then you all felt bad for us. But that was very short-lived, right? Because I don't know if the value's still there, right? And so I heard a kid the other day was like, I told my mom that you said I should be a teacher one day, and they told me I was crazy not to do it, right? So, and I said, well, you aspire to be whatever you want to be in this life, but know that I see that value in you, right? So it's not that the pipelines or those programs aren't there. People aren't seeking them out because of societal's vision or outlook of what education actually is. And until things get to actually be smaller, we can talk about small class sizes for teachers, or we could talk about smaller caseloads for clinicians, we can talk about all these things. Until that becomes a reality, who's going to sign up for that, right? No offense, I'm not really signing up for his job, right? Having the largest middle school, I mean, it's a fantastic job, but it's a large burden, right? And so, people were like, I'd rather just go work in accounting, or where I can leave at 3 o'clock and not get that phone call on the weekends, or have to worry about because we have to work with people every single day. We work with the lives of people every single day, and it's not just our students, it's our community, because when they feel burdened, we feel burdened. When they feel hurt, we feel hurt. And that's leadership, right? And I signed up for that, and I'm okay with that, but not everybody's cut from that same cloth, right? And for some, they're in it for 2 to 3 years and they're out. they leave education. So if you look at the pipeline of educators that come in for 2 or 3 years and then they leave and they're like, that's not what I thought it was. They can't hang. So I think we need to change perception, because we've kind of like have like the Abbott Elementary, what it looks like, but that's not reality. And so, like, I guess stop putting wool over people's eyes. Let's talk about the reality of what happens in education, so people aren't so shook when they get there. Because we got to start being honest.
So I'm a CTE hub in Montgomery County. So we have Thomas Edison, which is strictly like a vocational CTE school, and then you have Seneca Valley. So, like I said, I have automotive, electrical, carpentry, HVAC. I have law enforcement, cybersecurity, network ops, CCMA, early childhood. I have an IB, dual enrollment, early college, AP, NJROTC, all in one building. So when you talk about that, that's something I'm well versed in, right? And so Montgomery County is now going to a 6-region model, and each region has 6 schools or 5 schools. I can't remember. I have 6 in mind, or I have 5 in mind, and each of us has a signature program. So my signature program is IB on top of all those other things. But then Clarksburg High School, they are the CAT program, and so that's sort of kind of how we're addressing it in that respect, so that if you do want to be a teacher, you're gonna go to Clarksburg and be part of their CAT program. But I think it goes to Linda's point, it's the perception. So I'm the only male Hispanic principal at the secondary level, between 25 high schools and 30-something middle schools. There are 6 Latina females in secondary. And then you go down the line, elementary probably is hitting over 20. And when Dr. Navarro was at MCPS and she brought in all of our Latino leaders, educational leaders, it was a room of like 40 people with a staff of 22,000. So it's the perception of, for me, it's with my young Latino Hispanic males in regards to, yes, your father is in construction. Yes, your father's in landscaping. But here's what you can do and how you can get there. And it is very much that change of perception, which is really difficult these days. I tell some of my kids down in the CTE, the carpentry, the HVAC, I'm like, you're gonna make more money than I will ever make more money. And I can't dispute that. But at the same time, without us or the teachers, you can't get there. So where's that balance, right? And so it's a hard charge. And so I think we just continue the systems kind of work on how you address the needs and do the homegrown and just kind of grow it. But it takes time, but it has to start at a very early age, to move it up.
Can I have one more thing? So something you said earlier resonated with me, because I believe that I'm an inclusive, unified principal, right? I'm the only principal that has a school that is the only middle school that's a unified champion school and a national champion school for Special Olympics in the state of Maryland. That's a celebration, but it's almost sad. Because I just received that national award this past year, right? That in 2025, we have one middle school in our state that has won the recognition for unified champion sports or unified champion education in the state of Maryland, and we're the only one that's nationally recognized. So we also need to figure out ways that we celebrate our schools, because we spend so much time doing some of this reactionary stuff that we don't really recognize the amazing work that's done in our LEAs every single day. Because I look across our districts and I'm like, you already do all the things to be unified champion school. Like, why don't you apply for it? And they're like, I don't have time to do all that paperwork, the application and all the things, right? To lift us up, right? And so sometimes that's the issue. It's not the fact that they don't want to be recognized or don't want the positive press and don't want the positive things and the praise. Sometimes they don't have time to do it because they're so burdened with some of the other things. And so I think they don't always see the great things that are happening in our schools because we don't have time to always post it on social media and do those things because we're ecstatic to leave the building at 5:30 some days, right? and sometimes we're there till 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, right? So that's the reality, is that like we would love more time to spend on the instructional and the elevation of our schools and like showcasing the amazing stuff that our kids are doing every single day in our buildings. But it's a struggle because we spend so much time on this aspect of the safety and the threat assessments and all of that aspect of things. So, but we are one of them.
All right. I do want to be mindful of our agenda and our time, not to cut anybody off, because I know Ms. Gabby did look like you had your hand raised for another question. But we do want to leave at least 20-25 minutes for the next portion of our agenda, which is coming up with our next year items. So again, I want to definitely give you all a round of applause. Thank you all for coming and helping us. You are more than free to hang around, because again, we are going to be going into our topics for next year. So again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I would now like to open the floor for discussion of the board related to our 2026-27 priorities. Would anyone like to get started?
Yes, and I very much apologize. Unfortunately, my district just suffered some major events that I have to get back to and deal with. But I want to put on the table two things that are important, and the principals actually brought it up today. We need to, I would be interested to see if this board would be interested around the legislative season, what we are going to be saying around reportable offenses, what we're going to be saying around the discipline parameters that schools are working under. You just heard from practitioners, and I think I sit in the Governor's Council for Juvenile Justice. We have a lot of heated conversations there. There's a lot of perspectives. Victims advocates, juvenile rights advocates, sheriffs, state attorney's office, the courts, and everybody's coming into this. But we as superintendents are now ensuring that we put ourselves in every single place that is talking about safety for students. So I would like that to be introduced. I also think that the other piece that came up loud and clear is the ridiculousness of the hurdles to get some of these mental health people in our buildings. I, as a superintendent, I'm paying people their salary so they don't have to take off and have to do their hours. It is a huge investment in my local resources, but it's the way I can get a counselor to then turn around and give me a teacher that's going to be a counselor or a social worker or a psychologist, to be able to then turn around and stay with me longer and be paid to doing that. I think there is we need to go back to the board that works on certification, and we need to push the folks there, unions, all of the people that are sitting in those committees. We also have somebody there to make sure that these certifications are not cumbersome. More certifications for some, less certifications for me to remain a superintendent. I just did my recertification, and it's more cumbersome for me to get mental health folks. So I'm hoping that we can also do some joint advocacy with other organizations this year on that board. And I apologize, I ran here because I wanted to be here for the panel discussions. Our students are amazing everywhere. I'm biased towards mine, but I wanted to make sure I put those 2 points on the table before I had to leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Anyone else? Any other topics that we want to focus on for next year?
I echo the reportable offenses. As a classroom teacher, just in discussion today, a couple weeks ago, I had a young lady, I was planning period with one class in another classroom. The young lady, every time I turned her, she was in a different spot, she ended up young lady. Not familiar with them. And I engaged them, asked what was going on, and she's telling me that she's hiding from the student. Okay, I'm from student, she's like, no, no one won't do anything about him, and he's making sexual advances towards her, they're unwanted, some more things happen. Take the young lady to the office. Everyone's aware of this young man and his advances. Everyone's aware he has a track record in the school about things he's done, and he's still there today. And I asked another teacher, I just having a conversation with a teacher, and they're saying, well, they don't have enough. Putting your hands inside of a young lady's pants wasn't enough. But the school was so just, they're trapped in how they have to, what they have to do to escalate it to a certain level. And again, and to have it rehearsed, they bring the student back into the environment. And then the solution is to take the victim and transfer them. And that's happened several different times, where if the students leave the building because they can't properly address the issue. And then for my county, we are losing 40 APs who are going to be bumped back into the classroom, but we've already cut 564 positions, classroom support staff, so forth. So funding comes back to everything, but how you cut security or safety personnel out of the building, and you say because our numbers aren't that high, our suspensions aren't high, our exposure, because we can't expel, we can't suspend. And 10 days is only 10 days if the student doesn't have a special needs, because you can't go past so many days on their needs. So student safety, absolutely, but I'm a little curious to this because I'm an advocate for teachers as well. Teachers' mental health, my mental stability, knowing I'm going into a building and I seriously don't know what's going on. Because when we had a gun issue last week, staff wasn't notified. And the student was in my class. I wasn't notified that I was in direct line of, so reportable offenses has to be. I understand that sometimes in the past we've had students who were disproportionately penalized, and I understand it, I get it, but now we have them running amok. The system is allowing it, and we're setting these kids up for failure when they become adults. They'll go back into the system with this mentality that I got away with it before, I continue to get away with it, they couldn't do anything with me, now society can't do anything with me, and then society then they throw you away. So definitely, I echo reportable offenses, and I get the safety of the students, but if the teacher isn't safe, the teacher doesn't feel safe, and the teacher is mentally spent, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. Why aren't we getting more staff into the building? We see it in the news, we know why we can't get the staff. So, but reportable offenses, yes, it's just, we gotta maintain safety for all persons in the building.
So I think along with that, just from my perspective, I think that the student code of conduct needs to be revisited at the state level. I know there was some years ago that that was a huge topic, and there were some things on the legislative side that kind of changed things for all LEAs in regards to student discipline. I think post-pandemic, I think we're in a different place. And I think some of those things need to be researched and recognized across the state of Maryland with what's going on with the needs of our students. And if we are not going to change those policies and procedures for local LEAs, then we really need to seriously think about building up our alternative options programs, or at least making it easier for funding and local LEAs to build that up locally within their own LEAs. We got a lot of LEAs have one alternative options school for the entire district. I know in Howard County we have one, right? That is not enough when you're talking about trying to keep kids safe. When we're talking about trying to meet the needs of students, I'll be honest, every student, it may be shocking, every student is not ready to be in a comprehensive environment. There are parents that recognize this. There are students that will tell you, on post-pandemic, I can't operate in a school that's comprehensive with, 2,000, 3,000 kids. Like, there are kids at certain schools, they will not even go into the lunchroom when there's a large group of students. They will not go to an assembly. Like, that bothers them. So for them to be in school is a struggle each and every day because they are just not used to that environment. So anything that we can do to streamline that process, that students be able to get what they need, and we're not having a cookie cutter approach for all of our students, I think will benefit them. But we are seeing students that, again, I think we've heard that today over and over, that there are some serious issues going on with our students, and suspension may not, be the solution, but alternative options programs are the solution. But I don't think they're as robust as they possibly can be across the state. So.
I want to be very careful as I talk through this topic. I don't want to ever take away any of the protections or supports for a student with disabilities. But I think the pendulum has swung too far in one direction, where that free and appropriate public education does make teachers or school administrators think 3 times before they document anything and 4 times before they do anything about it. And that's not serving that student, it's not serving their peers, and it's not serving the staff. If a student cannot exist in a general environment, pushing them into that LRE, that least restrictive environment, for the numbers to count at this district level, is not serving the staff appropriately. And I think we need a more streamlined process to determine if a behavior is a manifestation of a disability or if it's a behavior of a student who also has a disability, because those are 2 different things. And I worry that keeping that student with a disability in the classroom who's having maladaptive behaviors because of other issues is not serving the district. So I think revisiting how LREs and FAPE are interpreted at the state level is a discussion to be had.
Awesome.
I have a quick question about your alternative school. And I know it may have changed again, but our alternative school, they changed it a year or 2 ago where you were sent to the alternative school for 30 days and had to return to your home school no matter what that happened was. I know that Tim Morrow was the principal there. He's a different function in the school system, but he had students in that alternative school that did not want to go back to their home school. They had a better learning environment being in the alternative school. They weren't there for disciplinary reasons, they were there for the reasons you talked about. And the system changed that and said, oh, sorry, you got to go back to your main school. And they did not do it, or they did not want to go to school at all. So revisiting those are absolutely pertinent. And I just want to let everyone know, if you don't know, funding is not the issue for law enforcement in these elementary schools. That's not a real big issue. The issue is getting people to be college, right? To be able to pass the process to become a law enforcement officer is very arduous, and we hire about 2% of the people that apply because of you just don't get past the background check, you get past the process. So you can throw all the money you want to it. There's not enough people to be counselors and social workers, all this other thing. So that's a systemic problem that we just got to work around, unfortunately. But I think the alternative side, definitely the legislative side, we've seen a major change since the Justice for the Investment Act was initiated, raising the level of children at the elementary school at a higher level before they be charged with crime. We've seen elementary school kids be a lot more violent than ever before. And as we were talking about during the break, that's where that attention has to be taken and be more proactive now at that elementary school age. Because if you're waiting in the middle of high school, you're too late. It's not going to happen. But big issues, but I think the legislative side is definitely the way to go. I think I'm all for not using the system to just punishing people. I'm not that. That's just not me. But I think there's a role in the judiciary to be the parental figure for some of these kids coming in front of the judge and being mandated into programs or things like that for children in not jail or not detention facilities. From a legal standpoint, there's value there. The other thing is that juvenile record doesn't carry beyond, it's not an adult charge, doesn't carry beyond the juvenile record. No one needs to see that. So it's not this long-term punishment thing that we think of. Some kids just need that discipline. They need to have that control of someone in the road telling them, you will do these things. Telling the parents, you will take your kids and do these things. There's consequences for not. So I'm all for that.
I'll be a little bit of the dissenting voice because I'm with Disability Rights Maryland. I'm often the person sitting at the table advocating for the child who has an offense in school, or I'm representing them at an expulsion conference, or monitoring their juvenile court case. And Maryland did do a ton of reform, as you all know, because of the school prison pipeline and disproportionate impact on students with disabilities and Black students. 2012 did a ton of reform, worked really hard. And here we are now, and it was really awesome to hear these administrators, and thank you for bringing them here. That just the honesty, I think, for me was really important to hear. But I think there needs to be, and I think that's what we're all getting at, is a real conversation and analysis. Let's look at the data. I don't want to just completely swing to the other side of the pendulum. There was tons of research and data done, and we made these reforms. And so now, what do we need to do to build on the reforms that were made, to tweak, to refine? And the lack of professional supports, the lack of counselors, social workers, nurses in the building for these schools, and those ratios, that's also something that the state has to look like in the pipeline. And I think the certification issues are really interesting. But so I just wanted to be a little bit of the dissenting voice to make sure that the kids who are sitting on the other side of that table their voices are being heard as well, and their families as well.
Yes, appreciate that. Thank you. Any other priority items? It is a lot, isn't it? It's good.
I don't know if it falls under there for solution or whether it be a priority. Maybe partnerships. So if the school doesn't have the resources and the funding, like county commissioner in county, and looking through all of the grants that were submitted, some of the grants were actually in the housing, so where the kids are living, there are nonprofits that are coming in and providing those services, not only for the kids, but for the parents, like whether it might be job visit. And I think that might alleviate some of the burden from the schools, like administrators might not feel as exhausted, and you're getting money from a different funding pool. So, but again, just listening, I don't know whether it falls under a solution or a potential solution there, or if it should be pursued independently. There are a number of nonprofits that are in high priority, impacted areas, and working with those families. Are the local school systems aware of them? Are they aligned and can they synergize?
Yes, I think that's the big question. That's going to be a topic item is how is that aligned per LEA? Because it may be different than the LEA. It may be great in Anne Arundel, and then Baltimore City, and then you might go somewhere in the rural aspect, and it's non-consistent. So it's how can we do more going?
So we were saying there's reform, right? Is there a way to work in alignment so that it's consistent throughout the state?
Any other items for 26, 27? These are all great items and great conversation. All right. So we will take all those in as we begin to kind of build things for 26 and 27. I appreciate everybody's comments. So I would like to If you look on the reverse side of your agenda, there's proposed dates. Continue with the first Monday of the month, starting in October and going every other month. For discussion, is the April meeting date. That is the one that's usually in flux. And April is a busy month. We can meet, not meet, but we need to make that decision, as a collective. So any board members want to chime in on what to do with that April date. And typically that meeting would be virtual.
I think 4 meetings quarterly is a good number. A number of other state committees meet quarterly. We might have.
So not to.
Not to.
Okay, that's so you don't know, right?
Can we cancel this year?
Yes.
Do we have the February meeting this year during legislative session? We did. Okay, we already dismissed it.
We did end up canceling it because we did not have anything pressing, right, at that point in time to report. So this particular year, we made the decision to cancel. But it was a standing meeting that then we pivoted forward.
Any other strong feelings on one way or another, or we're just whatever happens, happens?
I think maybe moving it and kind of having it quarterly. And do you have the authority, like if there's a special call meeting, if something needs to be discussed, like in April and put it out on the board? Like, is there the opportunity to do that?
It definitely is. It definitely is. And we can do that in a prior to meeting. We see a little bit that we need to, and we can make that adjustment as a collective.
For the October meeting, they offered hybrid, it didn't work out this year, so we all went virtual. So maybe just go ahead and make the call. We did. I was the only person that wanted to leave the school building. Could be in a little off.
We may be able to sweeten the pot. There may be a new area for us to meet, hopefully. So that might sweeten the deal of everybody christening a new area for us to convene. So maybe that'll get us there. At least I will be there to try to see what it is.
You can have their off. Even one more person.
Don't tease me with it.
All right, so I guess what I'm from hearing from everyone is that we'll make a vote to exclude that April meeting and move forward with just those 4 meetings for the year. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the proposed dates excluding that April meeting date?
Brown, I'd like to motion that we do these quarterly meetings as written with April removed from the list as discussed.
All right, recognize Mr. Premier. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. James. All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? Motion passes. The agenda, as far as proposed dates, is approved. All right, everyone. So before we adjourn, I would like to remind board members to register for the July 22nd and 23rd conference. I am registered and I will be there. I will also be presenting, so I'm very excited about that. Hopefully I will see many of you there at that conference. The next advisory board meeting will be on October 5th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Yes, this is a hybrid meeting, and yes, it will be at the new MCSS meeting space on Ambassador Road. We can't be excited. We are crossing our fingers and hoping that happens. Please do not hesitate to contact Ms. Bryant or Ms. Buckheit with any questions or items that need attention prior to that October meeting. They are always working, so they're always available. With that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Yes, to adjourn the meeting.
I move to.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gaddy. Do I have a second? All right, thank you, Ms. Jacobs. All right, any conversation? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to, hopefully everybody has a fantastic summer, and look forward to seeing everybody in October.